I'd like to call to order the February 16, 2010 meeting of the Louisville Planning and Zoning Commission and announce that we do have a quorum present. Item 2 on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the February 2nd, 2010 meeting. Do I have any comments, corrections, questions from the commissioners, or a motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion from Karen, second from James, to approve the minutes of the February 2nd, 2010 meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Meeting minutes are approved. Item 3 on the agenda is consent agenda plats. Item 3A is the final plat of Hearst Industrial Park Addition, Lot 1, Block A, 3.71 acre tract zone light industrial, fronting both Business State Highway 121 and Midway Road, east of Holford's Prairie Road. Item 3B is preliminary plat of Hebron 121 Station, Lots 1 and 2, Block A, Lots 1 through 8, Block B, Lots 1 and 2, Block C, Lots 1 through 5, Block D, a 90.09 acre tract zone mixed use 90, bounded by Lakeside Circle to the north, State Highway 121 to the south, the DG&O Railroad to the east, and the Timber Creek to the west.
Both of these plats have no variances requested, and staff has reviewed them and would recommend approval of both.
Thank you, Mary. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for Mary on these? And since these are consent agenda plans, Mary, I'm sorry, I still get these confused. These go on to City Council, or these are completed with this?
They're completed with...
They're completed here, okay.
Correct.
So do we have then a motion to approve items 3A and B?
Make a motion to approve item 3A and B.
Second.
Motion from Karen, second from Bill to approve items 3A and B on the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Items 3A and B are approved unanimously. Item 4 is public hearing consent agenda plats. Item 4A is final plat of Meadow Lake 4, Section 2, Lots 8R and 9R, Block O, being a .358 acre zone, single-family residential located on the east side of Swallow Lane, south of Garden Ridge Boulevard.
Again, this plat is a replat. I think a question came up a little bit earlier about what was going on with this plat. Basically what happened, they came in to replat the property when one of the homes was built back in, I believe, the 80s. It was built slightly askew on the lot, and so they bought another sliver of land to meet their setback requirements, but they never, it was never formally platted. So we had to go before the Zoning Board of Adjustment to look at the lot width requirements. They were granted a variance at the Zoning Board of Adjustment, and so now they could come back and proceed through the replatting process. So basically the homes have been there for a good 20-plus years. It's basically a paper item trying to clean up the lot lines. Both lots comply, and staff would recommend approval.
Okay. Thank you, Mary. Are there any questions on this one for Mary or any other staff members? If not, at this time, I'll open the public hearing on item 4A. Anyone wishing to speak in reference to item 4A may step forward now. It appears we have no one. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Make a motion to close public hearing.
Second.
Motion from Karen, second from Jim to close the public hearing on item 4A. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Public hearing is closed on 4A. Do we have any final comments on this one or a motion for approval?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion from Karen, second from James to approve item 4A. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Item 4A is approved. Item 5 is public hearing plats. Item 5A is the final plat of Catherine Commons Addition, lots 1 through 5, Block A, a .13 acre tract zone, Old Town Mixed Use 2, located on the northeast corner of Main Street and Henrietta Street.
Good evening. This particular plat is dividing an existing parcel at the corner of Henrietta and Main Street in Old Town Louisville into 5 single-family lots for townhomes. There are 2 variances that are associated with the plat. The first variance is to allow private steps and landings to extend a maximum of 4 feet into the Main Street right-of-way. And I've got that area highlighted in yellow. It shows up on your plat as a public interest, or private infrastructure easement. The second variance is to allow a 20-foot wide private access easement at the rear of the property in lieu of the minimum 24-foot width access easement. And I can give you a little bit of detail on those 2 variances. Typically, we don't allow private infrastructure in a city street right-of-way, obviously, such as Main Street. For obvious reasons, typically we, reserve that area for utilities, sidewalks, things of that nature, and really don't want it obstructed with private improvements. This is an existing parcel. It's been for sale for quite some time. I think it's actually part of an old, larger parcel that was divided several times over the last several decades, and basically ended up with this relatively small lot. And in order to divide it up and make it profitable for townhomes, the townhomes needed to be oriented toward Main Street, and that only leaves a lot depth of a little bit less than 60 feet, which in Old Town is acceptable, but that's obviously a very shallow lot for a townhome. What's really pushing the variance to allow the steps in the right-of-way is the fact that the lot elevation is considerably higher than both Henrietta and Main Street. And if the developer were going to excavate the lot so that it was even with Main Street, so you could step out the front door and be right at ground level with Main Street, the driveway on Henrietta would have to fall. Well, first of all, it would come up, it would raise up 6 inches like a normal driveway does to keep the water in the street. And then it would have to dive down at over 14%, which is pretty steep for a driveway, in order to get to the what would be the required floor elevation of the first townhome and be able to turn into the garage, which would be a very difficult thing to do for an average passenger vehicle. And then in addition, it would require the developer to run his drainage around the side of the townhome and out to Main Street rather than allowing the drainage to come out the driveway into Henrietta and then down to Main Street. So the main impetus for the variances is the elevation of the lot. Secondly, as I mentioned earlier, the lots are very shallow, and of course, each unit is required to have a minimum of 2 off-street parking spaces. These units will have 2-car garages on the first floor. So if you can imagine, you've got a lot that's somewhat less than 60 feet deep. You've got to have an access easement on the back to get into the garages, which is going to be 20 feet deep. And you're obviously, a typical garage is roughly 20 feet deep itself, so that really only leaves it leaves less than 20 feet for the first floor of the townhome, excluding the garage. So you can see how tight it is. The Old Town Development Ordinance does allow townhomes and other structures to be pushed right up against the street right-of-way. In fact, it's encouraged in the Old Town Development Ordinance so that it looks more like a downtown. So the issue of pushing the units up to the street really isn't an issue. It's just that, combined with the fact that you're going to have steps to get in and out of the front door, creates this problem with the steps needing to be out in the right-of-way. We met with the developer on several occasions and tried to work through this issue with the steps, seeing if there was some way possible to keep them from being in the right-of-way. As a matter of fact, when we first looked at it, he actually had extended the steps even further into the right-of-way than what's being proposed. And over the course of several meetings, we were able to come up with this compromise where the steps and the landings would protrude no more than 4 feet into the right-of-way. We've taken a look at the street section further to the west, down in the main downtown area where the angled parking is located, and we've determined that even if we allow these steps in the right-of-way no more than 4 feet, we'll still have enough room later on to come back in, do angled parking if we ever needed or wanted to, and still have enough room for a 5 to 7 foot wide sidewalk between the curb and the steps. So we've taken that into account, and given the grades and the size of the lots and trying to balance the city's needs with future improvements on Main Street, we think we've come up with something that'll work for everybody in the future. So staff is recommending that particular variance. The second variance is to allow the 20-foot access easement instead of 24 feet. Not the general development ordinance, the Old Town Development Ordinance allows single-family homes to be accessed by a private access easement, which is different than the general development ordinance. In a general development ordinance, you either have to be on an alley or a public street. The caveat to allowing these townhomes to have access off of a private access easement is that the private access easement, whether it's a fire lane or not, has to meet the requirements of a fire lane. In 2006, the International Fire Code was revised, increasing the minimum fire lane width from 20 feet to 24. So in turn, because the access easement has to meet the requirements of a fire lane, even though in this case it won't be a fire lane, it still has to be 24 feet wide. Staff is recommending approval of the variance. In this case, again, because of this, obviously the size of the lots is a limiting factor. And number two, had this development come in prior to the change in the fire code back in 2006, the 20-foot access easement would have been allowed without a variance anyway. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, David. Do we have any questions on either one of these variances?
David, back to the steps in the front. What does ADA, does that affect anything on house building or future requirements of the city?
No, the city will be able to provide an ADA-compliant sidewalk in the Main Street right-of-way in addition to angled parking if that ever becomes an issue. And of course, the homes are going to be single-family, individually owned homes. So, that issue doesn't really apply necessarily for that.
Just making sure we weren't creating something ahead of the game. Okay, sorry.
Anyone else? Okay, thanks, David. At this time, I'll open up the public hearing on item 5A. Anyone wishing to speak before the commission on reference to 5A may do so now. Does not appear. Again, we have anyone. Do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
Make a motion to close.
Second.
Motion from Karen, second from James to close the public hearing on item 5A. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Public hearing is closed. Do we have any discussion on any concerns, questions, anything on these variances? Do we appear to be comfortable with them, recommending them to the city council? Okay. Do I have a motion to recommend approval on item 5A?
Make a motion to recommend approval to the city council for 5A.
I have a motion from Karen and a second from Bill to recommend approval of item 5A with the variances that David's presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Item 5A passes unanimously. Item 6 is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Motion from Karen, second from Jim to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.